Well, I'm back after a little bit of a break. I'm still kind of in peak vacation mode. I've still got that vibe, still a lot more chest hair than I am comfortable with, but hey, we're going to face it together. I wanted to jump back into things after my 2 week vacation with just a little bit of like a loosey goosey, unedited, kind of off the cuffs. I guess summarization of the year that we've had in music thus far, because we are now in July. And if you can believe it, we are halfway through 2023. And where other years have come and gone, and at the halfway point, I always had maybe about two, maybe three albums that I really, really loved. And I'm like, these are forerunners of my favorite albums of the year. Like, this year really hasn't quite had that. Now, there's still been a lot of really, really good and I don't want to say stand out, but definitely good albums that I've really, really been digging, but nothing's really rose above the rest. You know, none of them have really shined the light on music to be like, this is what I want from music for the second half of the year. And part of it, I think, as I've been listening to it, and these past 2 weeks, I've really dove deep into the albums that I've kind of missed over the year. There seems to be this purveying thing when it comes to progressive rock and specifically progressive metal that I've noticed within this year, with new bands and some new releases from bands that I've loved. And I feel as though this is something that I think, like, I know progressive rock has had this intrinsically, but this is the first time that I feel like it's been keeping us from doing things that I really, really love. And that is really leaning heavily on the influences of the past and emulating that style of music rather than innovating and reinventing and trying to interpret different things. I mean, case in point, the three albums that I've really, really been digging and that I've been really digesting over these past little bit is Archivist. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Avkrvst. I think it's Archivist. Archvust. Archrust. Got it there in the end. When I read it, my dyslexia wants me to pronounce that as archivist because all those sharp edges are just flying around in my head. The Approbation, I've been listening to a lot of that. The Anchoret, It All Begins With Loneliness. And Nospun with Opus. Like, these three records I feel really encapsulates what I've been feeling from the progressive metal scene this whole year. And that all three of these records really do lean on sounds from the past rather than innovate what music should be going forward. And I love these three records, and I've been spinning them quite heavily, but, like, they feel as though they could have been released 10 years ago and felt just as fresh, you know? Now, this goes to how timeless these records hopefully will be, but it also puts them in a time that isn't where we are now. And in fact, I've been listening to a lot more of kind of like experimental black metal, you know, like Liturgy, like Victory Over the Sun, and I've been really getting into those records because I'm feeling a lot more innovation there. I'm feeling a lot more trailblazing there. I'm listening to things that I'm not, you know, used to, and I'm really enjoying that kind of aspect of the music. So that's probably why albums like, you know, 93696, I think it is, from Liturgy, and Dance You Monsters to My Soft Song from Victory Over the Sun, are probably going to be much higher on my year-end list because, yeah, it's innovative. You know, there's exciting things going on these albums and things that I haven't quite heard before. Now, at least with those three albums that I've mentioned before, and I'll talk about those in the individual reviews for those records, I feel as though Nospun's album, and these are three albums, as I mentioned, The Anchoret, Nospun, and Archrust. They're all brand new bands. These are all their debut records. So, you know, I don't want to rain on their parade because they're doing some really, really great music, and you know, the music that they're putting down is really, really interesting. But like, Nospun is the only one that I would return to because I really love the influences that they're playing with. You know, the Hakens, the Native Constructs, that kind of progressive metal that I really, really love, and I wish there was more of. Whereas the Anchoret and Arkrust are doing more of like the Porcupine Tree and the Opeth, and we've got clone bands of those, in the progressive rock sphere. You throw a stone, you'll hit 5 of them. So, so that's kind of where I'm at right now within the halfway mark. And that's also part of the reason why I've really loved the new Avenged Sevenfold record, because of how different it sounds, and because of that, a lot of people don't like it, and sure. But I love it because of how different it sounds. It doesn't sound like, everything that has come before. It sounds fresh. It sounds new. It's using techniques of the past to reinvent and recontextualize the music that we're producing now. And that, in my mind, is really what we need to have within progressive rock. So, yeah, that's just like a little bit of like my summarization. Other albums that I did end up really, really enjoying and really liking, and we'll see how this year goes, because I don't want to say they'll absolutely be on my top 10. But I mean, it's one of those, like, I will be shocked if they're not. I already mentioned Liturgy. I already mentioned Avenged Sevenfold, but the new The Ocean record for me was really good and really stand out. I really love that Holocene kind of essence and credo there. Air Not Meant for Us from Fires in the Distance was really good. It brought me back to the Woe from An Abstract Illusion from last year. That kind of like really deep, progressive, like tech prog that I love. And that's the other thing, like nothing's really stood out to me. The One Above Us by Hubris was really, really great as well. Some really good kind of softer jazz rock. And if we're going to retro prog, because we haven't had a lot of like really stand out retro progs this year, like Kite Parade or Retro from Kite Parade was a really tasty track in that sense. And one that came really, really early on was Hymns for Hungry Spirits by The Great Wide Nothing. That one was an early addition to the prog scene, and I really, really enjoyed that. I thought that was really, really good. And, of course, the new Haken album of Fauna. Again, this album was a real treat, because when it first came out, I didn't quite know if I liked it or not, because of how different it was compared to their past discography, how dense it was. It wasn't quite as proggy as their first 3 records, but it wasn't quite as genty and hardcore as their last 2 records. It was somewhere kind of in between, and it took me a while to really get into it, but, at the end of the day, it's probably the record that I've listened to the most outside of maybe Avenged Sevenfold's album. Like, those 2 records are kind of like neck and neck as to which one I actually enjoy the most between the 2, and how much I've spun the 2 of them. So, yeah, that's kind of like where I've been in terms of this whole half year. There's been some really good records. There's been some duds, but I can't say that anything is like really garbage, and I can't really say anything has been like a full-on masterpiece yet. We've had some close hitters. I will even say that Petro-Draconic Apocalypse from King Giz was, pretty close. It was one of their better records that they've released in the past little bit, but yeah, I can't really say that anything's been like really, really high up there. So like that's kind of where I'm at within this half year kind of retrospective. In a couple of weeks, I'll have my Q3 or Q2, the second quarter of the year, where myself and a bunch of my prog friends will get together and talk about our favorite album of the quarter from April, May, June. Talk about our favorite records, our most disappointing albums, and those albums that surprised us the most. So that's going to be really exciting. I basically do it just so I can keep my finger on the pulse and really enjoy, what albums are coming out. This is a good opportunity for me to promote and plug some of my other projects. I've got my podcast of Quid Prog Quo. It's updating once a month, so it's a pretty lax and pretty chill upload schedule. It's where I get my friends to listen to progressive rock music, and they get me to listen to whatever they want. The last episode that went up last Friday was with my friend Alicia. She and I got to listen to Beyonce and Kate Bush. So I hope you tune in for that. I'm trying to get people that aren't just my friends, and maybe some people that have a little bit more I'm trying to think of the right way to say it, because I don't want to say like musical experience, because I don't think that's a, but people that are used to talking about music. So I'm trying to get a few more of those individuals on the podcast. Speaking of podcasts, Grace Hayhurst and I have the Metalhead, the meditative podcast about metal music. We have a great time that uploads once every other week. And it's just metal music, some news, some album reviews, and then general discussions. And it's very chill. It's very, meditative. We don't blast beats in that case, even though we talk about them. And the other podcast that I have is a copyright and intellectual property podcast with my friend Sarah Roberts. That one's also getting uploaded once every other week, and we have a lot of fun. We talk about like banned books, and we did a whole episode about who owns Pink Floyd when Roger Waters tried to sue the rest of the band back in the 80s, and who owns kind of music. So yeah, we have a lot of fun on that podcast. And I think that's really about it. That's kind of what I wanted to do. Getting back into the fold of things, getting back into the rhythm, and making these records and album reviews. So I've got a lot of record reviews to come out. I want to talk about the new Bend the Future album, Sounds So Weird, the new Scar Symmetry album of the Singularity Phase 2. I want to talk about the new Martin Miller album, Maze of the Mind, the Squid album, O Monolith, the Approbation from Arc Rust, It All Begins with Loneliness from the Anchoret, No Spun. I also want to talk about the new the new Swans album, The Beggar. I've got quite a bit to say about that record. Really excited to talk about that one. The new Victory Over the Sun, Dance You Monsters to My Soft Song. I want to shout out Mark from Spectrum Pulse for putting me in that lane and recommending that record to me. I've been loving it. And then some new retro prog records from Comedy of Errors and Big Big Train. So expect all those within the next couple of weeks, as well as more stuff that will most likely and inevitably cross my path between then and now. So, as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.